on, Saka!
I've already made a mistake. Josh, who kindly said we could use that clip, said it'll be fine as long as we muted it. And I didn't. So very sorry. I apologize. I was meant to play the other one, but that was top of the list. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the DN35 podcast, a brighter, cheerier looking one. And we've got 5 of the very best, not including me, actually. That's very big of me. Tom has still not changed his mind, though 80% of you are now very much Hurst in. Tom is still flagging up a massive banner on the flyover saying Hurst out. Tom, is there nothing yet that would change your mind on having Hurst as manager?
No, just sack him.
Fine,
Terrible result yesterday. Get him out. Sack the board as well while you're at it.
Bruce has found a picture that he likes that I assume was taken by either Lee or John, which makes him look like some sort of Moses in front of the away fans. You're 2 games away from having one of those microphones you see on the continent, aren't you?
I'm not sure, mate. I don't know. I put it a microphone would have been very good yesterday. It'd been like one of your rants. I think I was when we scored the winner. I was going, it's wet, it's soaking wet. Hit it, don't cross it, hit it. And I'm going, I was still moaning as we scored. So yeah, they know better than I am, and that's why they're professionals and I'm not. But yeah, it was a good day, mate. It was a good day. We'll chat about it more in a minute, I'm sure.
I am slightly jealous, but hey, winning in Nottingham this weekend isn't for everybody, is it? Scott, it's nice to see you. Very laid back and sort of open a frontage here. This is
really.
Well,
in all honesty, I've made myself a roast chicken dinner and I've just nodded off for half an hour. So that's why, hence the laid back look.
I've started to have naps on a Sunday like my dad, which is slightly concerning. And Elliot, thank you as well for joining us. You rack up the podcasts over a weekend, don't you? How many have you done so far this week?
Yeah, I've literally just finished recording my own and come straight here. So yeah, no, it's been good. Yeah, what a day yesterday was. Absolutely fantastic.
It's I mean, we should really start there. I was one of the few unlucky ones that didn't get to go, which I really should have. I looked at the judges. It was about 2.5 hours away. It's probably about the same as what I'm considering to do to go to Yeovil this year. Well, I'll throw it out to everybody. How is everybody feeling, and what was the general review of the game, I guess? This is the problem when we have 5 of us.
Well, might as well open it out to someone who went.
Tom, you didn't go. What did you think?
Well, yeah, fine. Fantastic result. I actually listened to the BBC Radio Nottingham commentary.
Why?
What
has Tonda done? Oh, you got riled up Scott already.
Why? Because I think it's interesting actually to get other people's perspective on it. Obviously, the BBC Humberside team mostly watch us week in, week out, don't they? So they sort of aren't necessarily seeing much that is new to them. So I just thought it was interesting to get the BBC Radio Nottingham perspective on the game. I think I said in the WhatsApp chat with regard to the penalty, the BBC Radio Nottingham team were like absolutely sure it wasn't a penalty, and were really sort of irate that it had been awarded. But after Notts County opened the scoring, their commentary basically sort of insinuated, certainly from about, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes onwards, that we dominated the game. And they were really impressed overall with our performance. It sounded like in the second half, Notts County's best spell was actually after we equalised, where they had sort of a 4 or 5 minute spell where they caused us a few problems, and then we just continued to dominate. And the winner listening on the radio sounded like it was in inevitability. So it was quite a good listen. They were impressed with Clifton. They kept mentioning the fact that he was local, and then when Max Wright came on, they were really sort of keyed into the fact that he was local. I guess they're easy things to research, but it's quite nice to hear other people mention it and be impressed by it, isn't it, when it's your own team? And that's basically why I listened.
Scott,
so I wanted to know what they thought.
Does that wash with you?
No, yeah, it's absolutely fine. It's actually.
I thought you were going, no, it doesn't.
No, it's a fair thing to do. And also yesterday there was a minute's applause for Colin Slater, who was the old Notts County commentator at BBC Radio Nottingham, and there was a big banner in the cop stand behind the goal with his picture on. So yeah, it was quite an apt day to listen to BBC Radio Nottingham, I think, Tom.
I don't really know much about the guy actually, but he seems to have been well.
He was lovely. I met him a couple of times, and he was really, really nice.
Brilliant.
Were you on comms yesterday, Scott?
No, I wasn't. I was a punter yesterday, and I preferred the press box. Because I've got to say,
it's
well,
cheaper.
I don't know. I've not changed or anything, but bloody hell, like queuing up for a quarter of an hour for a toilet, like before the game. The concourse in that stand is not big enough for the amount of people that were there. I mean, there was some absolute disgraceful behaviour going on, in that concourse as well, and. Yeah, I just didn't enjoy that bit. I enjoyed the game, but it's just everything else that goes with it. I hate these. It's a love-hate thing. I love these big away followings, but I also hate them because it fills me with dread, especially when it's a 3:00 kickoff. Because I don't know. I just think some people just really let the club down.
Do you think it equates itself to New Year's Eve? That everybody who doesn't go out does go out, and so they can't pace themselves. So by about 11:30, they're all they've already passed good, and sort of they're half dead on spice look about them.
Yeah, I'm still amazed. It's a 3:00 kickoff as well, Notts County away. Considering Chesterfield would be probably 12:30, 1 o'clock.
I assume what our history with Chesterfield, the game is usually played at 3 a.m. and no one knows when or where until 20 minutes before kickoff, and then you have to answer a riddle before you can get a ticket, which there are only 5 available.
Also, I believe they ran out of food as well in the away end, which just smacks of, these people know how many tickets have been sold in the away end. It's not art to plan for these things.
I really didn't think this would be the first thing we reviewed.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, the win was great. It's just the experience of yesterday, just in the away end. It was good, but some of it could be better.
Do you know what? It's weird because we've had 2 different reports on the fan behaviour. I saw one on Twitter, which I thought was just sour grapes that came across going, I had to walk past the town fans. They were pretty disgraceful. I lived in Nottingham for a short while, and I always found the policing with us, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago now, was overzealous. But then I've also read that lovely bit that's come up on social media today going, look, I took my 3-year-old and town fans could not have been kinder, more caring, loving, whatever. I guess it's who you get and where you sit. And I guess Scott has been pampered a little bit too.
No, that is true. And I absolutely get that. No, it is true. Dare I say it, I'm not used to it, that in that sense. But I did enjoy the game, and it was it was lovely at the end when they got the winner.
Right. Well, let's not talk to Scott now. He's obviously clearly upset that Tom has decided to switch allegiances to BBC Nottinghamshire. Bruce, how was it for you, and what were your overall thoughts? And then we'll go back to the other side of the pitch and to the hoity-toity press box.
I think we're soon, to be fair, with Henry's affiliation with the BBC now, we're going to have more people. The other side of the ground. So that there are in the podcast that actually sit with the fans. I get where Scott's coming from, but I thought it was bloody brilliant. I had a great day. I like a bit of edge. I'm not going to lie. As long as it's the right people around the right people and not interfering with people who don't want that sort of thing, which is the old standing, sitting probably debate, isn't it, a little bit. I had a great day. We were on the train with some cans at 8 o'clock. I had a few beers, had a good day, didn't misbehave, had a good sing-song, and celebrated wildly when we won in the rain at the front. It was a great day, and the sort of day that you look forward to with all the shit that's gone before, really. And last week I said we've got to back up last week's win with a result. I would have happily taken a point at Notts County and then, look for 6 points from the 2 home games. But, let's go and get another 6 points and take 12 from 4 and get ourselves back in the playoff mix. Now that's a bonus for me. I wanted 12 points from those 5 games, and winning at Notts County sets us up for the opportunity to possibly get more than that now.
Yeah,
great day out.
We'll have to talk about that in a bit more detail, actually, because we do have a nice run of fixtures coming up, or so you would say, and I'm sure we'll come back in a month's time and not got any points. But
sorry, Alex, can I just say before we go on, about the fan behaviour? The train was absolutely rammed both ways, and more than one train, and I personally, where I was, didn't see anything. People were a bit lively, yes, but there was nothing beyond that I saw. The police didn't have to intervene on the trains at all, from what I saw.
Sounded like they wouldn't have been able to anyway if they'd have wanted to. They were that rammed.
Quite possibly, mate. But I'm just saying, I'm saying it how it is. That's what I saw.
The trains were absolutely rammed, and one extra carriage or whatever it was that Baz Whittleton said that had been put on is insufficient.
It was on the way there. It was just about enough. Sorry, Alex. It was just about enough.
You're not sorry. Does Grimsby Town have barriers yet, like the station?
No.
So some of them might have got.
Outside. Sorry, outside in the car park. Yes, it probably does. Sorry, I see what you mean.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully, someone got on for free, at least. But I mean, it was a good win, and we'll talk about the oil painting in a second. Who's coming up with it? Ollie's already asked about. But Elliot, what were your thoughts on the end, and what was the reaction from the players afterwards as well? I guess that must have been a big morale booster, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic. And I imagine for the 2,500 people that went in that away, and if you could sculpture like the perfect away day, that must be pretty close to what it would look like to win away at a top 7 rival in the fashion they did after the sort of the frustrations that have happened away from home for the last 4 months. I thought they were brilliant. I thought first half an hour, Notts County were the better team. Grimsby sort of struggled to get to grips with the formation. They played a 3-4-3 and almost played a box in midfield where they had the 2 sitting midfielders in Palmer and Brunt, and Rodriguez and Roberts playing as 2 number 10s, and it almost created a box that Grimsby couldn't get hold of, and Coke and Reiki were getting overrun, and then they had the width from the wing backs. But after about half an hour after the penalty, which their manager thought disrupted the game and wasn't a penalty, personally, I don't think it really was a penalty. I think it's one of those where if it's outside the box, you've seen they're given as fouls pretty much 8-9 times out of 10. But it's very rare you see a challenge like that given as a penalty in the area. And that's probably an inconsistency of the refereeing rather than anything. But even Paul Hurst said to me after the game he didn't think it was a penalty. And certainly Grimsby have had 3 or 4 penalty appeals that were more likely to get given than that one. When you think of the sort of challenges we've seen on Waterfall and Pearson from corner kicks in particular. So I didn't think it was a penalty. But from the 30th minute onwards, and particularly after half time, they absolutely dominated. I thought Arjan Reiki was fantastic. I think he is the Alex Hunt replacement that Grimsby have needed. And I think since Reiki's come back into the team in the last 2 games, I think it's shown how much they've missed a Hunt replacement than maybe we appreciated when he'd gone and in between those games where they didn't have Hunt or Reiki. I think his ability to control possession, to sustain attacks in the same way that the top teams do in the Premier League, the way it's just wave after wave of constant pressure. It also means you don't get counter-attacked as easy as well. And honestly, Notts County couldn't get out of their half in that second half. But up until the goal, you are thinking this is just a repeat performance of Wrexham and at Halifax, albeit they have played better at Notts than they did in either of those away games. I'm not suggesting that it was the same, but it was a better performance of the same, where they've created big chances, they've missed a penalty, McAtee's hit the crossbar, Ryan Taylor's blazed one over from 8 yards in the first half, and it's wave after wave of pressure, but have they got the cutting edge and clinicality to get something from the game? And then after they got to 1-1 with Taylor's goal, Notts County came into the game a little bit. Tom is absolutely right that they had nothing in the second half apart from a sort of a 4 or 5 minute spell after the equaliser where they put some wingers on and changed their formation, and it allowed them to get further up the pitch and pin Grimms back a bit. But even after they'd sort of weathered that storm and the crowd that were a bit restless, they still went for it. They didn't sit back. You could have easily, after 8 consecutive away defeats, you've not picked up a single point on the road for 4 months, to then still have the attacking intent to go and win the game. Yes, it's a set piece. By the way, on the winning goal, I don't know how their defender didn't get sent off for tugging back Abrahams for the free kick, because that's either not a foul or it's a foul and a red card. I don't understand where the yellow card comes from, because he's the last man and he's not tried to play the ball, so there's no double jeopardy. So I don't know how that wasn't a red card, but obviously that gets washed away by the fact free kick comes in, Waterfall heads it down, and we had no idea who'd put it in. We just sort of all went with Waterfall because we knew he'd headed it down, but obviously Michi put it in. And then the post-match interviews were great. Paul was upbeat. Paul's very good at not being too high when they win and too low when they lose. So he wasn't massively different, but you could tell there was a bit more of a enthusiasm in his voice a little bit. And then we spoke to Michi afterwards, and he was really positive as well. And I think for me, this just gives the players the confidence that they can beat these top teams. You know, they compete for large portions in these games, but they've only beaten one of the teams above them prior to Saturday. In 11 meetings with the teams that are above them, the 9 teams, they've only won one before the weekend. Now they've got a second win, a first one away from home. If they're going to finish in the playoffs, they've got to learn to beat teams around them, because there's no point beating all the rest of the teams, finishing in the top 7, and then you've got to beat the teams in the playoffs anyway and you lose. So they've got to, it was a big mental barrier broken by the fact they won on the road and they also managed to beat a top team away from home.
It's an interesting one, because we were Henry, who is obviously now part of the BBC Pennant at Shill and doesn't come on, was sort of talking about what was going on, and we were both of the same sort of opinion. I was starting to come the first half. I was listening to it, and I was quite worried. And it just feels like we're still, for all the excellent work that Taylor does, and he does a lot of excellent work, he's not consistent enough on the goal scoring record. I think the goal, what was it? His first goal, I think Mariner Hodo said it was
since Southend,
since for a long time,
November.
And I think McAtee as well is turning into a bit of a streaky player, confidence player, and sort of they're not the regular ones that you need when. And we're talking minor differences at the moment, because we're at such a high level, and in terms of what we need to do to get where we want to be. That we do struggle, and it's nice to see the other goals are coming from elsewhere. And Ollie's just said he's a Fete, the 20 goal a season striker we're missing. But I was listening to quite a few Notts County fans who reviewed the game and showed us what was going on, and that's basically just changed our badge to a Notts County one, and it's essentially the same conversation going, we still need that striker. Everyone's looking for it, and if Chesterfield are spaffing out 250 grand for one that looks good, and what Rochdale send out one for Charman, who was in Darlington, has gone to like League One, it just shows exactly the difficulties that every club in this league is having. I don't see hopefully these wins become, and we come back after 4 games coming up, that this is going to be brilliant. But we did seem to miss a few chances in the first half. Was it Clifton smashed the bar? I thought Taylor's was a good penalty though. I thought Taylor's was a good penalty, and I thought it was.
Well, it wasn't, because it missed.
Rude. I thought it was a good penalty.
How can it be a good penalty?
Interesting take.
Am I the only one?
I don't think it can ever be a good penalty, but it's not a horrific penalty. It's not like he skied over the bar, but I think good's probably a little bit of a stretch. Well, yeah, hit the post.
The keeper saved it, didn't he?
I thought that, but I've seen a replay since in it. On live, I thought he'd saved it, but it hit the post.
I thought
BBC
Keeper
Not
was-
thought he'd saved it. They also referred to Sousa as the Portuguese, and which tickled me. And they said at the end of the game that the win was nothing more than that we deserved, which was quite a nice compliment.
My wife thinks that Tonda says Susan instead of Sousa as well. So that's something to watch out for, just in case. I mean, it was what was the first half performance like? Well, let's talk about that. And should Crocombe done better for the goal?
The team should have done better for the goal. He ran from about the centre circle unchallenged into our penalty area and had a free hit across the keeper. I wouldn't portion any blame to Crocombe personally. Like I say, it was the frustration we had in the stands was that he was allowed to go unchallenged, and that was where the inquest was after the game. After the goal, was Crocombe pointing, and quite rightly so, at 2 or 3 of them that he just skipped past without a challenge.
Yeah,
Also,
I thought it was awful
sorry,
defending.
there was a lot of arguing as well, wasn't there? In that first half, there seemed to be a lot of disagreements between Crocombe, Waterfall, Pearson, Afete, which at the time didn't look great, but it turned out all right in the end.
I've written down here that for all the attacking and the dominance that we've probably had for 70% of the game, they put an awful lot of balls into our box yesterday, and I think Paul Hurst mentioned it in the interview afterwards that he hadn't deliberately tried to be more expansive, but they did seem to get down the outsides and get some balls, especially in the first half, across our box that just missed a toe or something else. There was a little bit of luck first half, but like Elliot said, I've watched Town for a long time, and I cannot remember us dominating a 15 minutes like we did at the start of the second half. They just literally, we were right at the end where we were attacking at the side, and the ball was just straight in front of us. You didn't look to your right at all. It was literally attack after attack after attack. But again, as you've mentioned, Alex, and I think as we've touched on, we did look like we still are not quite clinical, and the penalty misses that we've had would suggest that we hit the post. You've got to score penalties. We've missed too many penalties this year. Luckily, apparently, I think your stats team said that they've all come in wins, but it's going to cost us eventually, and we need somebody that can stick the ball in the back of the net from the penalty spot and open play.
Well, sorry, Elliot, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say there's nothing Crocombe could have done. I don't know where that suggestion would come from. That definitely no fault of Crocombe's. I thought Waterfall, in particular, his attempt, if you want to call it that, to tackle Cal Roberts was a bit woeful, to be honest. It was just awful defending, and this was what I was talking about a minute ago with the tactical setup where they got the 2 number 10s just in between defence and midfield, and I think the arguments were who's meant to go and pick them up, but Roberts just ran, as Bruce said, from the centre circle unchallenged. Waterfall definitely should have done better in terms of his attempt at challenging him, and Crocombe was nowhere near it. There was nothing Crocombe could have done, not at all.
It comes from me, because from what I could see, it looked like it went under him. So
I haven't seen a replay, but I don't think so.
I need to see. I need to have a look again then, if that's the case.
It was wet as well.
He could get a hand at. Don't blame the weather. Right. I mean, we're picking out the negatives sometimes, I guess, and I guess that's what we do when we win. But what was we talked about the dominance in the second half. What was it that changed it to sort of allow that dominance from the first half? Elliot's mentioned Reiki, and Afete obviously gives us more attacking options down the side as well. What was there anything else that gave us that opportunity, and did it look like we were going to break? Tom has suggested Coke go. Tom, you can say it. Coke going off now. Coke has become a point for some people. Not saying it is for you, Tom, but was that one of the reasons why? Was extra energy added when he was replaced?
Yeah, he's a little bit pedestrian, I think, in midfield in that first half. It looks every year that 35 at the minute, Giles Coke, unfortunately. He certainly did yesterday anyway.
I think Coke's one of their weak links. I would agree with that. I think Fox and Reiki should definitely be the first choice pairing of what they've got available. Or I would even have Clifton in there, personally, for his energy. I still think that sort of central midfield role is Clifton's best position. So I would have all 3 of them above Coke at the minute. But he's been playing Coke normally. Normally, Coke's been the first one to sort of drop out. But he started, I think, the last 4, maybe 5 games in a row now, which I don't think he's done all season, really.
It's an interesting one because he keeps persevering with Coke. Well, I think he's had a couple of poor games, and people have sort of pointed him out as potentially leggy and the like. I would probably prefer, at least with Fox's now hamstring injury, Clifton I think has got that engine that needs to go around to keep people busy while Reiki can do the hunt role. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Where's Scott Burgess in all this?
That's a good question.
Scannell, midfielder.
Who's that?
What's a Sean Scannell? I don't think, speaking to Paul, I sort of asked him where he saw Scott Burgess sort of fitting in when he'd signed him. And I think he sees him more of an offensive midfielder. I think he's more of I don't know if him and McAtee can play in the same team, for example. I'm not sure if that's more where he sees him as an advanced number 8 or as a number 10. So I don't know if he would be, maybe against one of the weaker teams, perhaps if you had Fox sitting, Burgess and McAtee, maybe that could work. But I don't see him doing that against certainly one of the bigger teams. So I think they struggled so much for creativity, didn't they, when McAtee was injured and then suspended? I think he is more a player that will fit in there rather than someone that will play deeper. And obviously Fox has got a hamstring injury, which we don't know the extent of.
I think you can see why, like, you would go for Coke in a game like that, and maybe Fox was maybe slightly struggling before the game that hasn't been communicated, and they were trying to just not bring him on early and not rest him to maybe protect him from picking up an injury or making it a slight knock that he's got worse. But I think you can understand why Coke is in the squad and that he signed him for another year, because he did play well at the back end of last season. And I don't know if anybody listened to the interview with him last week, I think it was, or the week before, I guess it would have been, because it was before last week's game, where he was talking and sort of just trying to basically keep his career going and stuff. But it's that level of professionalism that you have, I think I spoke about before, that you just sort of have around the training ground that encourages other people to do the right things, act in the right way. And not all of your decisions that you make on a match day when you pick a team come off, do they? You pick your team based on what's gone in training, performances the week before, and presumably that what you've seen of the other team when you've had them watched or when you've watched them yourself. And we all know that Hurst does a lot of research into opposing teams in the run-up to games. So it's just, I think it's as much one of those things that hasn't come off, but he is getting on. And one thing that a lot of people highlight about him when things don't go well for Coke is his mobility, which is unfortunate, but maybe a truth, and maybe for us is a better player to be used when the game is petering out a bit. But we need to just have a bit of stability in midfield and an experienced head to see us through the end of the game, rather than from the beginning where we perhaps need a bit more energy.
Coke was taken off yesterday because of a lack of mobility. It was a tactical change at half-time. It wasn't due to an injury. So that's exactly touching on what you're saying, yeah.
Because it sounded like that was the case the other week when he went off, when he got the gash on his leg. Was that against Halifax? It was, wasn't it? The Halifax at home game.
Yes.
When he got a gash. I mean, like, we definitely kicked on in that game when Fox replaced him. So there is like sort of a bit of consistency there in that as well. But that's it. That's all I've got to say. So.
Oh, okay, right. I mean, we've got a couple of midfielders out there. Richard Young has mentioned Luke Spokes. Danny Rose is out there as well.
Thought we were selling him to Wrexham.
Well, I don't think they wanted him in the end.
Luke Spokes didn't have the most successful period when he was on loan at Boston, and he's now at, where's he? He's at somewhere in the northeast, Spennymoor Town, isn't it? Yeah, I'll just have a look, see if he played yesterday. He has been playing a bit more there.
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to say I would agree with Tom that I think Coke would be better utilised at the other end of games. I think we said it before during the poor run that at the start of the season he wasn't getting into the midfield on a regular basis when we won that really good run at the start of the season, but he was coming on, the last 10, 15, 20 minutes just to help see games out with that bit of experience that we talk about.
It's an interesting one. I'd love to point out as well, if anybody wants to go to our new wonderful Grimsby Town website, there's a nice little subtle bit of propaganda on the league table which puts Town 8th rather than 10th, and has totally disregarded goal difference, and has just put us above Notts County and Dagenham and Redbridge. So wonderful stuff there. Nice to see, I guess. But we're pulling ourselves back into that. Notts County have got 2 games in hand on us, but we are certainly putting ourselves up there. Richard Young has just made us aware that Boreham Wood have beaten Bournemouth, which is pretty massive. Unfortunately, hopefully it doesn't affect the transfer fee for Dembele. There's some sort of, FA Cup clause in there or something. But that means that their game, they've only played 23 this season so far. I guess our game against them will be pushed back again. So that's going to be
the third time. That's the third time that'll be rearranged, isn't it? Because it was meant to be when the wind blew that bit off Blundell Park. Then it was meant to be over Christmas. Then now, so that'll be the 4th time it's been rearranged. You
never know. We might play Boreham Wood at some point. Maybe we'll just play him at our place and just the game can count as both. So that's maybe a good way.
180 minutes.
Yeah, 180 minutes. I mean, I'm sure Giles Coke will be able to manage it. I mean, it's an interesting one at the moment, and we did the poll as we have been doing, and maybe we'll stop in a bit, but it's nice to see how fickle you all are, and you should all take a hard look at yourselves. 83% are now Hurst in, after it was, I think, 66% Hurst in a couple of weeks ago, and it was almost getting to Brexit figures as well at one point. The fickle nature of football fans, Jen. Anyone want to comment on that? Are we out of the worst of it? I was worried up until this weekend, and after this, with some of the worst performing teams to come, I'd assumed you'd be pretty safe come the end of the season.
It depends what you say by worried by it, because having interviewed the owners last week, or this week as we are on Sunday night, they've got no intentions of changing the manager. So there's no worry, let's say, because they're not going to make that decision. They are fully behind him. They've gone through the transfer window with him. Yes, results need to improve, but they're never going to make that change in the short term anyway. So it's good to see that he's got a bit of vindication in terms of getting a little bit of fine margins, which has been a big thing, particularly at Wrexham and Halifax, as we keep going back to in terms of away games. But they've now got to follow this up with the games they've got coming. I mean, I put a post out on the Grimsby page at the start of the month and said, how many points do people expect from February? And I think somewhere between 10 and 13 was 10 being very much the bare minimum, and 13 was a fair summation, draw at Notts County and win the other 4. I still expect they should go and win the next 4 games and get 12 points if they want to finish in the playoffs.
Were people moaning after the game, saying Hurst out still yesterday?
I don't think so. I think there were definitely some at half time. Never do it at half time unless you're 6-0 down. Like, you look like a fool.
I read that someone left at half time.
Did they?
And went to Hooters. Went to Hooters and watched the scores.
That says enough about their mindset.
I thought you absolute moron.
What's the point? Nothing says a class then going to watch a depressed student studying law at Nottingham Trent University who is not wanting to be there and eating refrigerated wings for an hour.
I went there before the game. I was pleasantly surprised. I used to think it was crap.
It is.
Well, actually, it was all right. The food was actually all right. I quite like, and they've certainly improved. The beers were a better selection than from what I remember 10, 15 years ago.
It's your sort that goes to Hooters that drag the club into blooming. You just completely ruined your. I'm in the wrong seat. I've gone to look at some student that's depressed and don't want to be there, dressed up in a tight t-shirt for middle-aged perverts.
Honestly,
no, you've just Mute him, Alex. He's gone. He's dead.
Is he cancelled now? Has Scott just been cancelled?
Yeah. Do you think at any point Scott asked when the waitress left him his food? Did he go, "Do you come with the wings?"
Oh, don't. Honestly, it does. Some of that is on in there, and we were talking about that actually. My mates, we were talking about it after the game. That place, if the staff changed, if it was just a mixture of men and women, we wouldn't have noticed at all because we're too busy like having the drinks and food. But people genuinely go there just to perv on the women, don't they? And it's like, go to a strip
It's
club.
too late, mate. You've done it. Don't try and. You wouldn't. If it was full of blokes serving, you wouldn't have been in there. You'd have been in one of the decent pubs around the corner.
It wasn't my choice, Bruce. It wasn't my choice.
This is a backtrack of epic proportion.
The wings were nice, and like I say, I didn't want to go, but actually, I was pleasantly surprised. The food was actually all right. It was edible.
Richard Young wants
no prawn sandwiches.
Richard Young wants to know if you claim the Hooters on BBC expenses. He wants to know, is that what he's paying his licence fee for?
Oh, God.
This is the real pod nitty-gritty. Come on, let's get it on.
Oh, brilliant. Anyway, I mean, I paid £7.50 outside the ground for a double cheeseburger. Rob, what is wrong with you? Why are you paying £7.50 for a cheeseburger outside the ground? I bet it winked at you as well. Like, there's got to be, you can get like an all-day breakfast for that in Nottingham, can't you? Right. Kings Lynn's up next. Tommy Widrington's Kings Lynn, owned by what looks like Lovejoy. Do we know anything about it? We did ask people to come to us. Tommy Widrington was the only one to reply. So that maybe says something. But nobody's come forward from the Kings Lynn area, apart from apparently they don't like Boston. Does anybody know anything about Kings Lynn? I know they're called the Linnets. I don't know what that means. Oh, here comes Tom.
Their ground's actually all right. It's a bit ramshackle or whatever, but it's.
I mean, if we're saying that,
it's not a bad little away day. If you do go to Kings Lynn away and they put us in that corner, like when I went to watch Boston play there, they sort of put the Boston fans in the corner of like one of the small covered stand and then the open terrace behind, and you can't really see much from inside the covered terrace when it's
Easter
full.
Monday when Grimsby go there. It's the Easter Monday is when they're actually away at Kings Lynn.
And the only other ex Grimsby connection they had was Dale Southwell, and he's now playing for Alfreton, which presumably is a bit easier access for him. Tommy Widrington's son transferred from Gosport Borough to Kings Lynn and has been playing in centre midfield. Theo.
What, the guy's on Strictly?
Is it Theo Widrington? His son, Theo Widrington.
Kai's the other one.
Hurry up, ref, slow.
Yeah, I thought he was going to say he's got
a Charleston to do.
He's got a free transfer from Strictly to Dancing on Ice or something.
I've just taken on a job at Hooters.
They won 3-0.
Scott would have been round in a flash.
I just like that I'm no longer considered the perv of the pod for some reason. I mean,
their top scorer is Michael Clunan, who scored yesterday, and that was their first win, and their only win in the last 6 games. That was a point I was going to make about Town. Actually, we're about mid-table in the form table now, and we were like languishing right near the bottom. A couple of wins has thrown us right up into the middle of it, which is quite nice to see our progress. And the chairman of Kings Lynn was formerly a candidate for UKIP in some sort of election.
He looks it. He really does look it. He's a bit of a character, as they say, which is also shorthand for knobhead, which could be interesting to see. I'm expecting Andy Woodman style proportion of shithousery. I guess it's an interesting one. If we don't know much more than Tommy Widrington's son plays for them and Tommy Widrington manages them and they're somewhere in Kings Lynn, I guess obviously Hursty will know everything about them. But it surely should be 3 points that the Mariners are aiming for, and we've been managing to. We were managing at the start of the season to put to bed these sort of teams. But is this the sort of slip up we could expect? Wealdstone, Aldershot come to mind.
They were all away from home, though, weren't they? I think at home, certainly at Blundell Park, they have dispatched of the poorer teams. The only teams they've lost to are Notts County and Chesterfield, and then drew with Halifax and Bromley.
Yeah,
so
and
top teams.
Kings Lynn have conceded 50 goals already, which is quite astounding, really.
That those results that you're talking about as well, Alex, the games that you've highlighted, I would have said that the ones that came sort of after Wealdstone, and the next probably 3 or 4 or 5 games, which those games were in along with Solihull, they were really poor performances. There was a point then where the performances sort of slightly improved and have got better to the point where we were yesterday, where we weren't getting the results. But I think we're playing with an intensity now that had completely gone for about a month, and I think we'll win on Tuesday.
That's an interesting one.
I agree with that.
What do you think has changed then? What has been the sort of the change to add that impetus? Is it just the moving in and out of players, maybe getting characters out of the ground that weren't necessarily pulling their weight? Is it a realization that actually the manager could be in trouble at some point, as we were talking probably a couple of weeks ago? What do you think it is that's changed the mindset of the team recently and turned it round? Tom got there first. What do you say?
Well, I don't necessarily think there's been a change in mindset of the team. I think yesterday, for example, the fine margin went our way. And in those other games, if it had gone our way, we'd probably have had more of these positive chats that we've been having this evening on a few other occasions. A last-minute winner, you don't get many of them, but they can quite easily go the other way as well, as it did like at Notts County at home. They scored a late winner, didn't they, in a tight game, and the Chesterfield game was another example of that, like we just mentioned. So I don't think like there's been a change in attitude. Maybe the new players coming in, it sounds like Reike's really sort of settled in and made some positive contributions already. That, bringing new players into a squad always sort of shakes it up a little bit, doesn't it? Because people who have been there a while are like, oh, well, he might be playing in my position. And so if that's, someone coming in for your position, it's going to make you train harder and work harder, isn't it?
I think that really bad form as well, looking in from the outside in, coincides with the stuff that you've now heard that went on off the pitch. We've heard this, we've all heard the stories, and and the stuff being published in the papers of what had gone on, and it looks, as from the outside looking in, like the apple cart was upset for a few weeks, and he's got back because those games were just so flat. I mean, you've been to all of them, Elliot, haven't you? I think. You're missing since you started.
Yeah. It was Dover was the first game I covered, so I covered all that bad spell. I think that. For me, I don't think that I think the thing that changed was they had a core of that team that were young players, and when you go, they don't have that seasoned experience of going through. You look at someone like Riley Towler, absolute Rolls Royce at the start of the season, brilliant. At Aldershot, for example, it was awful. Like they just couldn't deal with that pressure they built for themselves, and when he's struggling, Alex Hunt went off the boil. They had a spine of young players that don't have the match experience. I think someone like Adam Crooks. I thought start of the season he was brilliant. I thought he looked a real coup, one of their best, more underrated performers. Now, even though the performance has improved to the squad generally, he is really struggling at the minute. I think the big turning point was the turn of the year. I think, obviously, they played at Dagenham, which was the 4th of December. That was a pretty awful performance. They got beat in the cup, which obviously was because of COVID in terms of that performance. And then they had that break. That big break's the turning point for me. That's where I go from Dagenham. From Wealdstone to Dagenham, the performances were pretty awful, and I thought that was just them playing really bad. And then I think since the start of the new year, since they drew 1-1 with Halifax at home, I think the performance has been miles better and much closer to the start of the season. The only difference is they've been playing teams that are much closer at the top of the league, and they've been losing by fine margins. I don't think we've seen a massive difference from the first 2 weeks of January and the last 2 weeks. There hasn't been, but the last 2 weeks compared to November, absolute polar worlds apart. The Solihull defeat, the Aldershot defeat. There was another bad one in there that I can't remember. Wealdstone. they were really bad performances and they deserved to get beaten in all those games. Wrexham, Halifax, they could have really got points. And had it been the opposite way around, I don't think we'd have got the same reactionary sort of analysis from fans after the Halifax and Wrexham games if they'd not lost all those bad games beforehand and played very badly, because they were genuinely unlucky. So for me, it's that break where they had for Christmas. Since Dagenham, the results have been and performances have been much better. It's not just because they've won the last 2 weeks. This 2022 form has been good and they're finally seeing some fruit from the labour. But from Wealdstone to Dagenham, it was pretty awful. That was when they were genuinely playing very badly.
Who'd have thought that god-awful day at Stockport would be the turning point?
Yeah, I know. They were awful. That was an awful performance, even given the COVID.
Well, we did see Scannell, Grant on the pitch. And they weren't
may never
holograms.
see them ever again.
Yeah,
they're a weird one, and you can sense the frustration with Hurst around them when he did that bit of honest appraisal of them a while back, especially for someone like Sean Scannell, who I think should be a decent player, but apparently not. Anyway, we can't dwell on them. We got Aldershot as well coming up, as the man already here to report on Aldershot. They're all miserable again, like they were. They went on a bit of a decent run, but from all reports from the people I know who support Aldershot, they're not great. Tom, you've also got a mate who's an Aldershot fan. What's he been thinking? Apparently, they've got worries about their captaincy at the moment. I think the guy who usually is Cody Lyons Foster is not going to be captain next week. I have no idea why. I don't know whether he's suspended, injured, or whatever. But that's the level of reporting you get on this podcast. Tom, any thoughts on Aldershot, or have you heard any musings?
Well, they've only lost once in the last 6, so they're not doing that. I mean, they've drawn 3 of them, so they're not doing that bad considering where they were. And their top goal scorer's got more than our top goal scorer, I think.
Oh, so they're over reliant on one person. Is that what you're saying?
Potentially, yeah. So I don't know. I think we should be looking to get 3 points against them at the minute.
It's nice to be looking at the games coming up, and you feel. I don't want to try and sound arrogant or anything, but Southend is the only one that I think is tricky coming up in the next couple of weeks. They're on a decent run of form. We play them on the Friday night. I think that's going to be a really interesting one. They've moved themselves back up. I'm going to check the correct Grimsby Town table from the website, and Southend are 14th. So they're 10 points behind us. I don't know how many places that is. This one obviously makes it up, but they've
won 5 out of the last 6.
Yeah, they're coming into it hot, and that's going to be a good challenge. And don't overreact if it doesn't go our way. But I was expecting a point yesterday, and then looking at the next 4 to get get all 3 points from. So it's going to be interesting. Whatever
you'd take 10, wouldn't you? The Southend's the one where you could excuse a drop point. Well, 2 drop points if they drew that one.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. We're going pretty quickly through this. Anyone got any other thoughts? Have I not asked a particular question that is worth asking? Anybody got any questions out there when they come in? I'm going to go through some bits while we're having a think.
Are we expecting to do any more loan business as our window hasn't slammed shut?
I think
we could all be wearing yellow ties still.
Yeah, I asked Paul. Obviously, we did pretty much at the start when I interview them and the BBC interview them. The first questions are, where are we at with the transfer window? And Paul pretty much said that they're not going to do anything imminently because they've got 2 spots left for loans, and ultimately they don't think they have a gaping hole, an obvious area to strengthen that. But the window runs to the end of March, so ultimately they could get, they might get Pearson suspended and Waterfall might do his hamstring, so they might then need that spot to bring in a centre back, and they've got 8 weeks to still use that window, and it might even get extended again. Sort of what I've heard is there's the potential that window may get extended even more. Last year it got extended by 4 weeks till the end of April, so it officially ends on March the 31st, and what I've been told is potentially that could get extended by another 4 weeks again. So they've got ages to do it, so nothing's imminent as far as I'm aware. And Paul sort of said that I know you're going to keep asking, but there's not a lot to report because he thinks there's more value in holding those spots in case they get injuries in one particular area later down the line.
That's fair enough. What was the question that came up? Ollie wanted to know: does anyone have any thoughts on the situation at Barnet? I haven't really been keeping close attention to it, but a player's been threatened with the sack, haven't they, over racism?
Yeah, we covered that in midweek, which is quite an interesting story. By the fact that, from what I've read in the stories that have been done, that basically there was an allegation against one of their coaching staff on last Saturday, so a week last Saturday, when they played Stockport. He was cleared of that allegation on the day by the police, but the players, so it was a Barnet staff member, but the Barnet players didn't want him at training, and he turned up at training on Monday and had a bit of a fisticuffs with their captain, and that's where it all went. And they sort of pulled together, the Barnet players, and said that they were potentially not going to play on the Tuesday night, a game they lost. I think that was against Southend, and they were allegedly told that they had to play or they could get sacked because he was cleared of the allegation ultimately, and that's where it all came from.
God, that is an interesting one, then, isn't it?
You can imagine that I ran that story past our legal department at Reach several times before I hit publish. Genuinely, I was like, I want to cover this, but I am scared, so I made sure that went through our legal department.
Chesterfield, they sacked their manager as well, didn't they? Because he's been accused of misconduct of something.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and something I definitely can't share on this podcast as to why he's gone for that. But yeah, it's not a surprise from.
Is he been sacked or suspended?
He was suspended, and now he's been officially sacked.
Okay. Do you want me to find the video? It's out there. He threatens somebody, I think but I guess
it's sort of a three-prong reason, and that's certainly one of them.
That's one of the stories, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the three reasons why I've been told.
I'll wait till they close down. If you want to listen into that conversation, do pay £10 to the podcast, and we'll
more than that.
You will be covering the legal fees as well. Barnet just seemed a bit of a mess of a club anyway. Didn't they not have their shirts turn up as well, or something like that as well? The merchandise wasn't ready last season. They also didn't book the training pitch, so the players turned up to train, and like the under-11s were using it.
That goes back to the jokes you were making about Bromley.
Yeah, exactly.
They literally did it.
It's a wonderful one. Adam wants to know, Tom, if you're going to Boreham Wood away.
When is that?
I don't know. 19th of April, I'm going to guess.
I don't know. It depends on my family life at that point.
Boreham Wood away is the 19th of March, so you're close. You're a month out.
Oh yeah, no, that's a definite no. Helena's due on the 14th.
We've got Yeovil and then Boreham Wood in back-to-back away weekends, which I'm absolutely delighted about.
Well,
yeah. Now, what I was going to say about Barnet,
as well, isn't it?
Dover's at the end of this month.
Yeah.
Yeah, only a couple of weeks before then.
Yeah, so there's a couple of home games in between. Play Tuesday night.
I'm going to love it. I'm going to be busy. Tom, what were you going to say?
Well, one of my mates is he's a Tottenham fan, but he grew up in North London, so Barnet are like his second team, and he grew up in the Barnet area. And we were chatting about Barnet last week, and he said that Barnet are sort of in a tricky situation since they left Underhill, because where they play now obviously isn't in Barnet, and the area where they play already had like a pre-existing sort of local non-league team. So in terms of like where they're situated, they're basically in no man's land, and the chairman that sort of relocated them to Barnet was kind of relying on the fact that they would get players from other academies in London and build up a team that way by sort of getting players who hadn't made it for top London clubs but still wanted to stay local. But in the time that it's taken for Barnet to move there, get the stadium set up and have this income from like England, teams facing England, like training there and stuff, lots of other teams in London, such as Boreham Wood and Bromley, have also come to the fore and are now fighting for those players that would have almost at one time been fairly exclusive to Barnet, because they were like the sort of top non-league London team, really, maybe along with like Dagenham and Redbridge. And they're also now without like a local fan base, so they're not getting the numbers through the gates either to provide that additional income which you would get from not just fans but also like local sponsorship as well. And so they're financial situation hasn't developed in perhaps the way they were hoping to when they relocated to this new stadium. And this has all sort of snowballed into them going from being like a bit of a yo-yo Conference League Two team to now sort of staring relegation to the Conference South and possibly sort of staying there in the face.
There's a lot of opportunities in London for clubs. I mean, the amount of them that clamour around for maybe WSL ground, Boreham Wood obviously host Arsenal, and Chelsea now use their own ground, which used to be FC Wimbledon's. I'm trying to think of where
Kingstonian Chelsea's ground, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where Spurs play. Palace play at I can't remember. I think they play at Hampton or something. But there's quite a few. Staines as well used to have it. Aldershot used to play host to Chelsea's under-23s. That stopped recently, which meant they had random games there. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. Oh yeah, that was the one I was thinking of, Ollie. West Ham ladies are at Dagenham, and that's what I can remember when I went there. So there's quite a few opportunities around London for those to make. Also, didn't they have something to do with the medical centre there as well, Tom? They were like sort of sponsored by Hitachi or something like that to have a world.
I'm not sure, but I think the point is it's a bit like Arsenal with the Emirates. When Arsenal came up with the idea of the Emirates, it was this idea that we're going to have a 60,000 seater, and those extra 25,000 seats that we're going to have on top of the old Highbury is going to give us the financial edge. But then as soon as Arsenal built Highbury, all of these like oligarchs and Emirates started coming into the game and investing new money into the game that hadn't previously existed. And so the bigger stadium advantage, which would have been a real thing in the 90s, then in the late noughties, ceased to become an advantage. And it's kind of the same situation that Barnet had found themselves in, is that they came up with this great idea that they would do that, what you've just basically been talking about, but you've also highlighted that there are like 5 or 6 other clubs also doing that and making an income from it, and so it doesn't give them the competitive edge that they thought they were going to get from that setup.
Are you saying we should host the Ajax women's team? Is that our next step? I've always thought, rather ludicrously, we should try and have some links with Holland, considering there is a flight daily to Amsterdam. We're probably just as close to them in terms of access as we are to Manchester and Liverpool. So, maybe we should go over there and flirt with the Ajax Youngen or whatever it is and try and get what is it you usually ask on Championship Manager? Ask for a feeder club or whatever it is, and see if the board reject it or not. Gents, that's probably about it, isn't it? We're sort of starting to waffle. Anything else anybody wants to add before we knock it on the head and then enjoy the 3 points on Tuesday?
I've got a couple of bits people mentioned. Dave Smith said it was a quality day. The atmosphere in the town stand was as good as he's ever seen it. Man of the match for him was Reiki, which I think Elliot talked about, and somebody else, Scott, I think. Who else was it? I asked for these, so I thought I'd better mention them. Keith Taylor says, how can a train company sell so many tickets knowing not everybody can get on because they don't care? And finally, Lloyd Edwards, if Carlsberg did away days, a dream away day, plenty of beer, great support, fantastic atmosphere, good performance, and a last-minute winner.
And well done to the club for offering free tickets to local, not just local youth teams, but local football clubs. They put, you can apply, I think it's for the Kings Lynn game, possibly for the Aldershot game, I can't remember now. But a nice initiative from the club to give local people a chance to see the top team in the area.
Lincoln. I mean, we should just note as well. Obviously, unfortunate to Scunthorpe United for losing their final against Oldham at the weekend. Such a shame to see such a historic club struggling at the bottom of the Football League. Who would have thought having an £11 million debt on 3,000 attendances was unsustainable? Certainly not us. Well, Tom, thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch up in another game. I've just seen how close Dover is, so I'm going to have to go to that. It's only an hour and 40 minutes away. Tom, if you need a lift. Bruce, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Who's got me on speaker? I can hear myself like half a second after. Scott, pleasure as well.
Cheers.
Thank you. And Elliot, thank you as well for joining us.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
That's all right. And I'm going to end on this one. Ian Cochran, I hadn't seen this one, said it was a great turnout from them. The funniest part of the day was when a load of Grimsby fans piled out of the station and stopped on the canal bridge on their way into town to sing Sing When You're Fishing to a lone fisherman on the banks of the canal. And that made his day. So thank you to them. Hope everybody enjoyed their day. And we'll all see you at either Kings Lynn or at Aldershot, or whether you're down this way as well. Thank you so much. I am always absolutely fumbling for the tune. See you all later.
Scunthorpe United have lost 4-0 at home to Exeter City this afternoon.
Love it.